as we turn right now to an issue of prisons here at home. While President Obama's pledge to close Guantanamo and the secret overseas CIA prisons, calls are increasing for him to re-examine the treatment of prisoners detained as part of the so-called war on terror being held inside the United States. With little public scrutiny, the Bush administration opened 2 secretive prisons in Indiana and Illinois, known as Communication Management Units, or CMUs, that are designed to severely restrict prisoner communication with family members, the media, and the outside world. Dozens of Muslim men are still being held at the CMUs, as well as other prisoners, including environmental and animal rights activists. The government's provided little information about the special prison units. A search on the Bureau of Prisons website yields just one document, even mentioning the program. Only a handful of news articles have covered what's been described as a little Guantanamo by some of the prisoners. The first CMU was opened in 2006 in a special isolated wing of the federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana. A second CMU was opened last year in Marion, Illinois. Prisoners held inside the special unit include Dr. Rafil Dafir, the Iraqi-born doctor from upstate New York who's serving a 22-year sentence for violating the Iraqi sanctions by sending aid to Iraq through his charity Help the Needy. Yassin Aref, the Kurdish-born imam from Albany, New York, who was convicted in a controversial FBI sting operation. And also the environmental activist Daniel McGowan. He's serving a 7-year sentence for his role in 2 acts of arson. Some critics have suggested McGowan and other non-Muslim prisoners are being held in the CMU because the federal government wants to avoid accusations that the CMUs are designed to only hold Muslim men. The Bureau of Prisons declined our invitation to join us today, but in a written statement, a Bureau of Prisons spokesperson said, quote, "Race and religion play no factor in an offender's designation to this unit. It's solely based on their need for increased monitoring of their communications." We're joined now in Washington, D.C. by Will Potter. He's a freelance reporter, editor of the website greenisthenewred.com. Earlier this week, he published an article called Secretive U.S. Prison Units Used to House Muslim, Animal Rights, and Environmental Activists. We are also joined by 2 attorneys who represent men being held in these cases. But Will Potter, just lay out the story for us.
Good morning, Amy. Thanks for having me. These CMUs are so-called self-contained units in 2 facilities in the country. There's one in Terre Haute, Indiana, and another in President Obama's home state of Illinois at Marion. And according to the Justice Department and the Bureau of Prisons, they're being used for inmates that need increased communications monitoring. In practice, what we're seeing is a roundup of inmates from a variety of prisons across the country that are being put in these CMUs and having intense communications monitoring take place that rivals some of the most extreme prisons in the country, including ADX, the Supermax in Colorado. And these inmates were taken there. They're given no opportunity to appeal or have a hearing of their designation. Once they're there, they have extreme restrictions, including having all phone calls monitored and limited to 15 minutes a week, where the average is about 300 minutes a month. You have visitation restrictions that are including no personal contact and limited to 4 hours a month, whereas with the ADX Supermax, for instance, visitation hours are 30 hours a month. And on top of that, you have a restriction of due process rights. These individuals have no idea why they're there, and they have no means of challenging it.
How much is known about these prisons? How much has been written about them?
Not very much has been written about it, and very little is known. I have a Freedom of Information Act request obtained through attorneys that requested to know who actually is in these facilities. The government acknowledges that they exist. The government acknowledges that, through their institutional supplements, what the policies are, at least the skeleton of those policies. But the government refuses to say who is actually there, why they are there, and how they can get out if they want to appeal that designation.
I also want to bring into the conversation 2 attorneys who represent men being held inside the CMUs, the Communication Management Units. Lauren Regan's the executive director of the Civil Liberties Defense Center. She's part of Daniel McGowan's defense team. She's joining us from Eugene, Oregon by DN Video Stream. In New York, we're joined by Kathy Manley, an attorney for Yassin Aref. Lauren Regan, let's begin with you. Describe Daniel McGowan's situation detention at the prison. Exactly where is he?
Well, he is in the CMU in Marion, Illinois. He was literally snatched in the middle of the night from a federal prison in Sandstone, Minnesota, and was never given any reason why he was transferred there. He had just completed his 6-month prison review, and they gave him complete exemplary reviews. He was a model inmate. And interestingly, Daniel really had no prior convictions at all. Normally, he would have been qualified for a very low or minimum security prison. He had no violence or any problems in the prison system, and he wasn't convicted of any terrorist crime or being affiliated with a terrorist organization, other than the government's claim that he was affiliated with the Earth Liberation Front.
I'm looking at a piece in the Eugene Weekly. It says in a letter that Daniel McGowan wrote to you, the prisoners refer to the unit as Little Guantanamo and speculate when the real Guantanamo closes, some of the prisoners will be sent to Marion. Lauren.
Yes, that's correct. The inmates there do call Marion, Illinois, Little Guantanamo. Part of the reason that they call it that is because it is a secret facility. They do feel as if they are being hidden not only from society at large, but from other inmates in the federal system. As well, as Will mentioned, their lives within the prison are extremely different from even those that are being sanctioned or punished for violent actions while in prison. There is an incredible amount of barbed wire. Daniel has actually said that in seeing pictures of Guantanamo, the unit where he's being housed is actually more fortified than the photos of Guantanamo. And, just to give you an example, normally prisoners in the federal system have access to recreation yards and all sorts of outdoor activities, but at Little Guantanamo, there are 4 cages that they are allowed out into for a very short time period each day. The cage has a basketball hoop, and that's about the extent of their recreation time. Also sort of hearkening to a Guantanamo-type existence. And the other similarity, of course, is like the people in Guantanamo Bay, these individuals have no understanding of what they did to get themselves into the CMU and what they can do to get out of it. Normally, when a prisoner is being disciplined for something they did wrong, they are able to earn their way out of that disciplinary unit. Even those that are being held in Florence, Colorado, the most violent prison in America, if they, conduct themselves for 1 year with good behavior, they can go back into a general unit. But as far as we know right now, Mr. McGowan will serve the remainder of his sentence in this facility because we can't find any mechanism to challenge his designation there, which will be part of a future litigation.
Is Daniel McGowan allowed to grant any interviews from prison? Has he done any media interviews?
Well, we've attempted. There have been several requests by media to conduct both print and film interviews, and all of them have been denied. And as far as we know at this time, the warden at that unit is indicating that they will not permit any contact. And in fact, even his attorney calls to me are greatly restricted. I'm only allowed to speak with him on the phone if we have an imminent upcoming court hearing. Otherwise, I have to write to him, and we've already had one letter, attorney-client privilege letter, opened by the prison and read, and they made comments on legal strategy that I was sending to him. So there's a bunch of problems.